combine small town roots with business savvy, and you've got the Rural Rundown podcast. We're sharing our marketing and branding strategies, tips, and tricks that rural businesses can use to educate, inspire, and entertain their customers, and to help you make sales and hit profit goals. So what does it take to go from your mom is your only fan to famous in a small town? Tune in and listen up as we feature business owners and organizations that are doing big things in their community and creating opportunities for generations to come. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Rural Rundown podcast. Rach and I forgot to film an intro. Record an intro. So this is Brenna by myself, welcoming you back to the podcast, and we interview T and Cass of the Type It Out podcast for this episode of the Rural Rundown. This was a really fun conversation about Enneagrams and what the Enneagram is, how we're typed as Enneagrams, and a little bit about how and why Terryn and Cass have a podcast speaking about this Enneagram. And we talk about how they kind of use the Enneagram in their daily lives as ranch wives, ranch moms, working with other people in business. And so this was a really fun conversation that we had. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Rachel, you've never taken the test, have you?
Well, I've taken it like unofficially. I don't know. You guys will have to fill me in if there's like an official place I'm supposed to take it. But I know what it said I am and what wing I am. I don't know. I haven't really given enough like real research into it. So
we're curious. Tell us how you guys got into the Enneagram, why it's important, how you use this in kind of your day-to-day life on the ranch or in business. Just kind of give us like the real down and dirty about the Enneagram.
Do you want to start, Cass?
No.
Okay. The first time I heard about the Enneagram was at Christy Wright's Business Boutique Conference in the fall of 2018. And the whole conference was abuzz with Enneagram this and Enneagram that, and I'm this type. Even Christy said her type on stage. And so I was intrigued at the time, so I Googled it and found out that it was a personality typing system, but I didn't really get into it until summer of 2019. I was listening to Annie F. Downs' That Sounds Fun podcast, and she always has an Ennea Summer series, and that's where I got really interested. And so I took an online test, and it said I was a 7. But when I read the book, The Road Back to You, I realized that while I do have some characteristics that are 7-ish, I'm actually not a 7. I'm a type 9 because, and what clued me in was the type 7's deadly sin or weakness that they struggle with is gluttony, and that did not resonate with me at all. But the type 9 sloth most certainly did.
And I've listened to your podcast. I didn't know anything about the triads or like how that worked. So I was really interested in that. That's where I think I like mistyped myself. But Cass, I'm curious about you. Tell me how you got into the Enneagram.
I don't exactly remember when it was. I think I heard a little bit about it because everybody was talking about it. And then Jen Hatmaker also talked about it on her podcast. But I love taking surveys about myself. I think I just like to talk about myself a lot. So I was like, oh, another survey for me to take. And so I took it. I've mistyped as both a 5 and an 8. I'm a super 1. I'm the oneiest. Sometimes I feel like the onest one that ever won. And I love the Enneagram because it helps me a lot. But I know like Terryn really identifies with the sloth of the 9. I really identify with the inner critic of the 1s. The 1s have a fun voice in their head all the time. And I didn't realize that not everybody had that voice. And so when I found out that I wasn't nuts and also there was something to that, I got really excited. And then T mentioned something about the Enneagram on her Instagram, I think like in, December of 2020, I think it was. And so we started talking because I was like, oh, I love the Enneagram too. And so then we were like, what if we did a podcast? And so then we have a podcast about the Enneagram because we both just really love it. And a lot of the Enneagram, like a lot of stuff in the world isn't super geared towards rural people. Not that you can't just like listen to any old thing and apply it to you, but we thought it would be fun to have an Enneagram podcast for rural women, people, because we know we have some male listeners, like Terryn's husband Tom. He's our like number one fan, which is really cool. But that's where it all started for us. Is we both really enjoy it and really enjoy how helpful it can be, not only in self development and personal growth, but also I find it incredibly helpful with getting along with other people because I'm a 1, so I can be really judgy, and it helps me slow my roll a lot when I am being a little more empathetic. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, Terryn, at least your husband listens to your podcast. My boyfriend doesn't listen to ours. He could care less.
Well, he doesn't listen to ours either.
The funny thing is that he was really resistant to using the Enneagram as a tool or having me give him advice that was centered in Enneagram, like stuff that I'd learned through the Enneagram. And so he just listened to the podcast to be supportive of Cass and I. But then when it came to Cass's episode where she was talking about being a 1, then he got like hooked on it. And now he uses it just as much as I do because he is also a 1. And he thought I was just pulling his leg when I was talking to him about the inner critic and things that 1s struggle with. But now he's like all about it.
So how did you like, because you're certified or you have this kind of education in the Enneagram. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided that was something that you wanted to pursue or something that you were passionate about learning more about.
Well, basically, my bestie twisted my arm. No. I mean, she did. She was very adamant about me becoming a coach, and I was like, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the bandwidth. And then I shared in my stories, like Cass said, about the Enneagram, because I thought that would be a way I could talk about it more and help people with it, but I wouldn't be coaching. And then Cass messaged, and I was like, oh, this will be the perfect outlet for that. We'll start this podcast, and we'll be helping people, and I'll be satisfying that itch, so to speak. And then as the podcast got going, I just could not shake the feeling in my gut that I was supposed to do more with it. And so in November, your Enneagram coach, Beth McCord, she does like periodic launches throughout the year, but she launched her Become an Enneagram Coach course. And I was like, I'm just going to do it and we'll see how it goes. And so far, it's been going really well.
So can you just kind of fill us in on what you do as a coach? Like, what do your clients get out of working with you? Go ahead.
Well, I'm still in the beta testing stage of one-on-one coaching, but thus far I've done some workshops I was at Nebraska Women in Ag. I did a workshop with Farm Bureau Young Leaders Conference, done some group retreats. And then I just recently did workshops with my first ranch. So that was really fun and exciting. And Cass, do you care to talk about the one-on-one thing?
Sure, because I am one of T's beta testers. So
even though she's really nerdy and knowledgeable anyway, she appeased me to be a beta tester.
I mean, like I said, I really like talking about myself, so we spent an hour with you telling me what I need to do better. So I love coaching. Coaching's one of my favorite things because I'm a 1, so I have a really hard time doing anything. I live in the planning stage a lot because 1s are focused, we're motivated by perfection, which is tough because everything you're never going to be perfect. So Terryn, I very lovingly call her one of my ledge pushers, the people who encourage me to just jump off and do things. And so when I found out she was opening up her coaching for beta testing, it was like me. So I think a lot about, and T, you can correct me, a lot of Enneagram coaching is about helping people get out of their own way, but specifically by their type, because everybody's different, every type is different, and each type stands in their own way a little bit, depending on what they're afraid of or what motivates them, or, what they want to get out of life, kind of thing. So Terryn and I have been working together a lot on just doing things and not having to be perfect all the time, which is really hard for me, but it's kind of necessary when you're starting a business like I am. And so, but it's through the lens of your type. So it's very personalized, and it's different than other coaching because the Enneagram really gets at the heart of what motivates you. Not just how you behave or what you like or what season you're in. It's about what motivates you at your core. So, it's very helpful because it doesn't just give you like a checklist of things that you should do. It really helps you understand why you are the way you are and why you're doing what you're doing and how you're standing in your own way. And then she gives me homework, which is sometimes deeply uncomfortable, to help me kind of... And the Enneagram helps you with self-awareness if you use it in the way that it was meant to be used. So when you have a coach who's helping you via the Enneagram, you become aware of the limitations you are putting on yourself, and about the potential that you have and the work that you were made to do. Because a lot of it is, for me, is understanding what I'm here to do, what I'm made to do, and then how my drive to be perfect can sometimes stand in the way of that, which is actually not good, especially if you're looking at it from a biblical perspective, which is how T and I both approach the Enneagram. So that's what we've been working on. But it really is really helpful when you're trying to figure out why you can't move forward or what the roadblock is, or, like in a super practical way, not like in a therapist way, not like in a tell me about your childhood, but more like tell me what's in your heart. What are you feeling? What is that? And then she usually looks at me and she's like, oh, you're such a one. Like, that is a very one thing to do. And I'm like, I know. And I know. The thing is, I know a lot about the Enneagram. I know these are one things. But having a coach helps you. The outside perspective really helps, because then someone can look at you and say, hey, you're being an idiot, so probably stop. And then you're like, oh, okay, I will. I'll stop that.
And Cass is also different. Like she said, it's very personalized. So she already has vast knowledge of the Enneagram. She's already done a lot of work on her own. So her one-on-one coaching is way different than a couple of my other beta testers who didn't even know their type when we got started. So it's very individual, personal.
And this is kind of how the Enneagram differs, right? Is that it's like focusing on what motivates you. Because surely we've all taken like the Strengths Finder test or like a leadership test, or, even the like IENP, NFJ, whatever, a test that is as well. But the Enneagram is different because it's focusing on what motivates versus what your personality is, correct?
Yes. Yep. It's about why you are the way you are, not what you do or your behaviors.
So if someone is, let's put someone in, they want to find out their type, but they don't know anything about it, what would you tell them to do?
Well, I tell them to listen to our podcast. But also, Cass and I feel the same about the online tests. They can be a great place to start, but if you start with a test, don't stop there. Don't say, well, the test told me I was type 7. If I had done that, if I had stopped there, I would still believe I was a type 7. Mistyped, of course. So if you're going to start with a test, take the results from the test and then grab a book like The Road Back to You, or tune in to Type It Out with T and Cass, and listen and dive a little bit deeper and see if those motivations really ring true for you. Because I say, and I think Cass agrees, she can say whether or not she agrees, but I think with the online test, it's really hard to gauge motivations in an online test. And also, sometimes subconsciously as humans, we choose answers that we want to be instead of that we actually are. So if you're going to start with an online test, don't stop there.
I agree. Another thing you can do, some online tests will give you, like, you're mostly a 1, but your next one is a 5, and your next one is a 3. Go read or listen to podcast episodes about all those types. You don't, because some people are like, I don't want to read a book. Okay, well, don't read a book. Turn on a podcast. I really enjoy, it's been very helpful to me to listen to podcasts where they're interviewing somebody of my type. Because when they're like, do you do this because this? And you're like, oh, yes, I do. And so it helps you. Or if they say, well, do you do this and then this? And you're like, no, that doesn't resonate with me at all. It could be a sign that that's not quite right. But reading about, like T said, I think a lot of us lie on those tests a little bit. Like when it says, like, are you super judgmental? No, that's a terrible thing. Yes, I am. So if you're not in like a very honest headspace, or you've had a bad day, or whatever it is, the test might mistype you. And so I would recommend like taking the ones that seem they're like your top ones, or the ones that you're most intrigued by, and start by reading about those types or listening to podcasts with those types, and kind of see which one really motivate or like resonates with you. Because the difference between, like we said, Enneagram versus a Myers-Briggs or a Strengths Finder is that other people may behave the exact same way that you do, but be motivated by completely different things. So when you treat it like a behavior kind of test, it doesn't work. But when you start learning about the motivations, it kind of, everything changes, because it goes way deeper than a Myers-Briggs or a Strengths Finder, which are super helpful. Those are good tools. But I think those are tools that we use in different environments, and the Enneagram is more applicable to everyday life, because it's about what drives us. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Or you can just read one of the books. You don't have to take a test or listen to our podcast. You know what I mean.
So maybe share with us, because you guys are both, you're both working on the ranch, your moms. Share with us how this has, knowing your Enneagram and using it for its abilities, using it for good. How has this kind of like changed working with your spouse, or being on the ranch, working with other people?
It has greatly helped and improved my working relationship with my husband, understanding that he's a 1, and understanding that sometimes he lets criticism out of his mouth that is not directed at me. It's just letting it out because the inner critic in his mind is so dang loud. And so knowing that has allowed me to give him a lot more grace and not get a grouch on, because he's not actually upset or criticizing me. He's just letting some of it out. So that's really helped. And another thing that has helped, conversely, like with him communicating with me, is knowing that I need more time to process and make a decision. And also knowing that I go along to get along a lot, and giving me permission to say no. Like, I about cried the other day because he was like, what do you got planned for today? And I was like, what do you need me to do? And he was like, well, I could really use some help with this, but you can say no and it's okay. And I was like, okay, actually, I really would like to say no. And I mean, like, I'm not kidding when I said I about cried, because it's like such a relief knowing that he wasn't going to be upset with me for saying no, that it wasn't going to cause conflict, because 9s are the peacemakers, so we don't like to have any kind of conflict. But yeah, those are just a couple of ways that it's really improved our working relationship.
I agree. I think it's super helpful knowing what type the main people in your lives are. My husband is a 5, so he doesn't emote at all. And I knew this about him before the Enneagram. He's just not an emotive person. He's a very analytical person. And that throws people off sometimes because he's not super chatty. I obviously am. It works out great. But it helps me to know that if I am like super hyped up about something and he's like deadpan, it's not because he doesn't care. It's because he's analyzing and gathering and he's, doing all the things. It's also helped me understand that when he makes a decision, he has put a lot of time and thought into that decision. So unless it's something that I'm really like the hill I want to die on, which I don't recall a time that it ever has been, I'm going to go with it because he's put so much effort and thought and expertise and knowledge and time into that choice. It also makes him really good at his job. It also means that when we work together, a lot of the planning, the back end stuff is going to fall to me because it matters to me. And this isn't necessarily a 5 thing. He's just super low key. He doesn't worry about stuff. He gets what information that he needs and then lets it go. 5s are the only type that can truly distance themselves from how they feel. Like they see a feeling, they're like, pisses me off, and that's it. They just let it go. They can distance themselves, which is super handy sometimes, not always great other times. But it's helped me understand him because sometimes I want to get all riled up about something and he doesn't want to. And knowing my type has helped a lot with how I parent because I'm a 1, and so I want everything to be perfect all the time. And that is really hard on kids. You cannot expect kids to be perfect all the time. And as a 1, I see where things could be improved all the time, which means I notice when our house is messy and when the bathroom is not clean and when there are things everywhere and all of the things. And so I've had to learn to let go of a lot of stuff, understanding that that's just my type, that's how I am. But I'm going to have to pick and choose which of those super type 1 hills I will die on because I can be really unfun and take a lot of the magic out of things if I am too focused on the plan or the list or what we're doing or just. So that's when I know, let it go, lean into your 7, which is where 1s go when they're healthy, which means we get really fun. And also it's helped me understand when I'm being too hard on my kids and expecting way too much out of my little friends because I am hyper motivated by things being perfect. And it also, like today, I get overstimulated really easily because we can't multitask. We're terrible at multitasking. And I have 3 children and they're very loud and I work from home, which is not ideal. And I know that when everybody's home, when it's loud, I need to close my computer, stop trying to do more than one thing. And if I catch myself, so 1s are in the anger triad, you touched on triads. So the way that anger shows up in 1s is we get really resentful. And so I know that when I am getting resentful because I'm not getting something done, because it's loud, because my time has been interrupted, I need to stop what I'm doing. And I usually just go away for a minute and I sit down, figure out what I'm, just get in touch with my feelings. And then I show back up to parent because otherwise I get really snappy and not nice. And I don't want my kids to remember their mom who was just kind of nagging them all the time. So I've learned to put myself in timeout or, volunteer to go check on the horses at the barn or fill our furnace because we have a wood furnace that heats our house or whatever, just to take a beat and then show back up when I'm, a few minutes later when I'm ready to engage, which is, I think it's a good skill. I have a suspicion that my oldest is also a 1, but you can't type kids that are this young. So I like to help him understand, like, you don't have to be perfect all the time. I try to tell them when I've made mistakes, which is really hard for me to admit when I mess up, and tell them how I feel, that kind of stuff. Because in my unhealthy times, I just get kind of resentful and mean. So it helps me be a better parent to know what's going on, why it's happening and how to fix it, to kind of head off any stupidity because I'm the grown up, and so they shouldn't have to sit here while I'm being a baby about stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Some of the one things you're saying, I'm like, maybe that's what I am. I don't know. But I do have a question. You said how old you had to be able to be like typecasted to your number or whatever. I'm probably not saying that right, but
About 16, right? T is, like the good teenage years.
I think they have to be able to articulate their motivations.
Yeah.
And
how
understand
they're
what's driving
feeling.
them. I think they could probably do it younger than 16, but like our oldest is 12 and he is not ready yet. He wouldn't be able to articulate what motivates him.
Yeah.
They have their types.
Mm-hmm.
You're born with your type. They have them. It's just being able to articulate, and you can't type them because it is motivation driven and you don't know what their motivations are.
Right. And I suspect my oldest is a 1 because we have a lot of the same mannerisms and a lot of the same. He's really hard on himself when he makes a mistake. He's really motivated by a list and a time and a schedule. That doesn't mean he's a 1. But it does mean that, like, if he is a 1, I want him to have the resources to notice or to kind of let go of that perfection a little bit, which even if he's not a 1, I want my kids to know it's okay to mess up and it's okay to have a hard day. And here are some tools you can use when you are feeling like my middle kid, who is certainly not a 1. We know with him, he gets super overstimulated, even though he's this big, loud kid. He needs time in his room alone. So just giving kids the tools, but like T said, you have your type. Like if you know your type as an adult and you look back on your childhood, you're like, oh, like, yes, I have been a 1 since I was born. And it's super obvious because some people are like, well, I think your type changes. No, it doesn't. You just grow up. Or you don't. Or you grow into an adult man child. Not necessarily a man child, but a person child. And proceed in that manner. But I think most people who are self-aware look back on their childhood and they're like, yes.
So this is like a little selfish of me, but my boyfriend and I, we also work together. We both own our own businesses, so sometimes we're working separately, sometimes we're together. And I'm like, I want you to take the Enneagram test because I feel like that would help me figure out like why you do some of these things you do. How do you encourage somebody to venture into learning more about this?
You can ask him if he wants to do it, but if he doesn't, that's okay, because you can still use the Enneagram to communicate with him, because at the end of the day, it all comes back to what you know about yourself. So even if you don't know someone else's type, you can still use this in communication. For example, myself as a 9, I struggle with being passive aggressive. And my ultimate goal is to be kind to everyone. And I know that when I'm being passive aggressive, I'm not being clear. And when I'm not being clear, that's not kind. So it is helpful to know other people's types, but if he's not interested, that doesn't mean you can't still use it.
That's interesting. I like that. Thinking about it differently.
And I'm over here like, I made my husband take the test because I wanted to confirm that I was indeed correct that he's a 5. What happened with my husband is I had a pretty good idea because I'm a 1, so I know everything. But I opened up the test and I asked him all the questions, and then because he's like, not everybody has a type. This is fake. This is fake news. This is not real. And I was like, it is real. It is real, Robert. We're gonna do this. And so I went through all like 60 questions or whatever it was, and I think at this point he's just used to me talking a lot, so he just like nodded or shook his head. And so then I was like, that's why I thought you're a 5. And then he was like indignant and was like, I am not. So then he went and took a test. And he was like, oh, maybe I am. And I was like, yes, honey, you are. But like T said, they don't have to. They don't have to take the test. But you could also explain like, hey, I I just want to know. I want to know this about you so I can communicate better with you. You know, and I think it would be fun. And if you do this, I will make your favorite dessert. Like, bribe him. Don't, listeners, you shouldn't bribe people to take the Enneagram. But, I mean, sometimes a little extra motivation is helpful. Especially if he's a certain type, like, you know. Or a dude who likes to eat good food. I use food as a motivator probably more than I should.
Hey, I'm here for it.
It works. I have a question. So, how do we not let ourselves get boxed in by the number we are?
This is like my most favorite question. Okay, so this is not a phrase that I came up with myself. I think I heard it from Suzanne Stabile, and I'm not sure if she was the first one to say it or not. I don't know who to give credit to, but I know I heard it from Suzanne Stabile, and she said, the Enneagram does not put you in a box. It opens up the box that you're already in. So there are a couple of rules to follow when you're using the Enneagram as a tool. The first one, most important one, is don't tell someone else their type, because again, it's motivations and you can't know someone else's motivations. You might be able to suspect by behaviors, but like Cass said a little while ago, we can have the same behaviors that are motivated by very different things. So don't type people. The second one is don't use this as a shield. So if you learn your type, do not say, well, I'm just a type 9, and so I'm just gonna be passive aggressive all the time because that's how I am. Don't use it that way. And don't use it as a weapon. So I would never say, Cass, you're such a 1 and you just need to knock it off right now. Like, that's not helpful. So don't tell people their type, don't use it as a shield, and don't use it as a weapon. Does that answer your question?
I like that. Very, like, to the point as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Okay, Rach, now,
Go ahead.
well, I have, like, first question. Cass, because you said you love taking personality tests and you love doing this. Did anybody take the Harry Potter, like, which house are you?
Oh,
test?
yes. Oh, so Terryn is not a Harry Potter person. I am a Harry Potter person. I have taken I have a Patronus. Yes. I do have a house.
Well, what house are you?
I'm a Ravenclaw. I wanted to be a Gryffindor, but I'm not. I am a Ravenclaw because I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm just a Ravenclaw. That's how I've always tested. So, here we are.
Rach, do you know what you are?
Yes, I'm a Hufflepuff.
Oh, I love a
love that.
Hufflepuff. I think T would be a Hufflepuff too.
I
think that's what T would be. I think it's more okay to house
I've
And
people.
I have no idea
I think you're a
what you
Hufflepuff.
guys are even saying.
The Hufflepuffs are really nice, T. The Ravenclaws are like more about intelligence. Gryffindors are brave, and Slytherins are. They have self-preservation in mind. We'll just put that. Yeah. Because I don't want to offend any Slytherins.
This is so interesting though, because I think when I like test for the house, I test as Gryffindor. Same thing when I typed myself, I typed as a 3. But as I started to learn more, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm a 1. Like that voice inside your head, that's definitely there for me. And the fact that other people don't have that makes me resentful of them.
The 1
And
is the only one with a deal breaker. So if you are a 1, you have an inner critic. If you are not a 1, you don't have the inner critic. Even if you do everything else that 1s do without that inner critic, you're not a 1. So an inner critic is not a conscience. And you can tell me if this resonates with you. An inner critic is something in your brain all the time telling you what you could do better, what you should be doing, how you should do it, how you should improve on every situation ever, how you could have done something better. Like, I replay all of my social situations. Like, I will replay this podcast in my brain when we're done, not out of social anxiety, but to think about what I could have done better. Or for the next one, what am I going to do differently? Right now I'm thinking about, like, all of the things that I should be doing. You know, like, it's just, I'm thinking that my hair is having a moment. So if that resonates with you, and you're motivated by, because, you know, lots of people feel resentful, especially if you are not good at delegating, right? You can be bad at delegating for lots of reasons. But we're resentful because the inner critic all the time. Like, if someone if someone criticizes you and you're like, thank you, but yes, I have already said that to myself, then you might be a 1. And I get resentful because I don't trust other people to do a job in the way that I would want it done. So I do it myself because I know that if I do it, it's going to get done right. Like, do you reload the dishwasher? Because if you reload the dishwasher because there's a right way to have the dishwasher, then you might be a 1. But that's
like exactly what I'm thinking in my brain.
Yeah, and that's why I love the Enneagram, because I know that about myself. I know that I'm never going to be happy with the level of perfection that I have achieved, but also if you approach it from a biblical perspective, I am never going to be perfect because I'm not Jesus, right? And I was made in this way. You know, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, so you should just do what you're here to do without being so focused about motivation or about perfection, because you're never going to achieve it. So if that resonates with you, then you might be a 1. You should go listen and go read and see if all of that stuff resonates with you. And then also you can see if that changes how your working relationships happen once you know your type, because it is kind of a game changer, I think.
Yeah, the dishwasher thing is like, I was getting so mad about the dishes not making it to the dishwasher, and I'm like, why do you do this? Like, you put dishes right on top of the dishwasher, and Oli goes, well, when I put them in there, you just redo it, and so I'm just leaving them out here for you to, like, do it the way you want to do it. I'm like, oh, that's so annoying about myself.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, my husband literally says that. Because I'll be like, I was like, oh, you know, you can load the dishwasher. Whenever he's like, no, I can't. And I'm like, what do you mean? The Lord gave you hands. And he's like, yes, but obviously the Lord did not give me the ability to correctly load the dishwasher. And I'm like, also true. That's also a true statement, because if you have stuff facing upward, it's not going to get clean. But whatever. It's fine. So God help me when my kids are in charge of loading the dishwasher.
Yeah, I feel that. I think I would need to go do more research now, because I'm pretty sure I've been, like, having a suspicion for a while. Actually, the first time I took the test, because I think, correct us on this too, I learned this listening to your podcast, how the wings work. Because when I first took the test, and I don't know where I took it, but they told me that I was a 3-wing 1, which I've heard is not possible. Right?
No, your wings are on either side of your core type. So as a 9, my wings are 8 and 1. Cass's are 2 and 9. So they're the numbers right on either side of your core type.
So now we know. So I think the whole time I was just mistyped. Should have been a 1.
I do have a question kind of relating. Your niche is, I mean, anybody can listen to your podcast who's interested, but women in ag or who have, you know, kind of a rural background, is your mission or your goal when you say you want to help them? Like, what does that look like? Can you kind of share a couple instances or dreams you have of that?
Well, I think Cass said it perfectly earlier when she was like, in rural America, we're often underserved. There's a ton of podcasts and a ton of books and all of that on a variety of topics that you can listen to, but it's hard to find it within agriculture. And I'm actually going to kick it over to Cass, because she actually has a really good way of explaining this.
Uh-oh.
So
now I'm wondering
here's you,
which way I've explained it that is the way you want me to explain it.
The one about grocery shopping is,
and that's what I was gonna go to. So, or maybe I hope this is right. What did I say about grocery shopping, T? Because there's several times. I talk about grocery shopping a lot on ranches.
I think it was about how far we live from town and like services that are available in cities that aren't we don't have.
It's kind of like when you read something about budgeting and they tell you to stop eating out. They tell you to walk more places. They tell you to, buy your groceries. Don't waste food. Like, we already do all that because that's what our lives are. Just quit going out with your friends. Don't get a Starbucks. Like, okay, well, Starbucks is 45 minutes away. Do I get Starbucks? Yes. But that's because I have to drive a kid to preschool. So there's all these times when you're like, yeah, but. And so I think when our goal is to kind of, because we are underserved. In rural America, we're underserved, both because we're rural and also because we don't make up a very large percentage of the population. So just by resources, and just by the percentage of things that are available to us, we're always going to be a little underserved, which is a different conversation. But I think T and I want to meet people where they are, which is different if you live in rural America versus a town. Because, for instance, in my opinion, and T, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think working in a corporate office environment is way different than working on a ranch. Because sometimes, there are different stakes. Oftentimes we're working with our spouses, our parents, or, we work for a guy on this ranch, but we also have people who Bert has hired because he's the manager. And they're younger than we are, so you feel a little parental towards those folks. Or maybe you're on a family ranch and you're working with several generations and things are really messy. That doesn't happen very much in corporate America. And also, we have animals, and so emotions can run really, really high. And sometimes we're forced to work in conditions that are way less than ideal. And think about a calving season, a harvest, or something where the weather is going sideways and you can't sleep. Not because, you have some paperwork you have to put in, but because if you go to sleep, calves will die. And so the stakes are very high. And I think understanding where you're going to go when things get stressful, I'm going to go right to being resentful. And being really motivated by, we need to do this and we need to do it now and let everybody just do what you need to do, whatever. T is going to do other things. My husband is going to do other things. And so living in where, and we can't, a lot of the time on a farm or a ranch, you can't just go take a break. You can't just go say, okay, I'm going to go get a coffee and clear my head. Maybe you don't have childcare. Maybe you are stuck because there's a blizzard. Maybe it feels really stupid to drive 45 minutes to town. Maybe you just can't. There are limitations that we have, and also freedoms. You can go for a walk and be in nature or whatever, and sometimes you're like, you know what? Screw nature. I just want a coffee. So I think we hope that with this podcast, we'll be able to meet people where they are and give them a set of tools that are more designed to the situations we find ourselves in agriculture that are not. Because I grew up in town. I grew up in a suburb of Denver. And the way that I move through the world just because I now live on a ranch is completely different than the people I grew up with. And so I think we need a more tailored set of tools to deal with what we have to deal with out here, and with what we're doing as our job, because it's pretty unique. And so I think T and I want to help meet that need in a way that we feel is really impactful. Yeah? Is that what you're looking for, T?
Yes. That was exactly the analogy I was looking for. You read my mind.
Yes.
I wasn't very clear with what I was thinking
perfection.
of.
Yes.
Yes.
That is such an excellent way to look at it.
And Cass and I have been talking about this behind the scenes too, but everything that we do on the ranch with the people we work with, clear down to the animals that we work with, we use communication. And so everything she says it way better than I do, but we want to help improve communication and we want to serve rural folk.
Love that. So besides listening to your podcast, the Type It Out podcast, what are other ways that people can get in touch with you guys, learn more about the Enneagram, or more about the programs you're offering?
So we just launched our Type It Out podcast website, so typeitout.com. And then we're on Instagram at Type It Out Podcast. And then personally, I can be found on Instagram at Terryn, TERRYN.Dreeling, D as in David, RIELING, and on the web at faithfamilyandbeef.com.
And I am on Instagram as at CassKJohn, and my website is casskjohnston.com.
Terryn, I've been following you since your Instagram handle was Faith, Family, and Beef.
It was that for...
Ever.
When did I change that?
A couple months ago.
Okay.
I changed it at the first of the year.
Yeah,
I think.
you
Okay.
in 2022.
So it was that for almost 7 years.
Wow.
And then I changed it.
That's awesome.
Just felt right.
Yeah, Rachel and I just talked about that at the beginning of this year too. Like a new year, a fresh start. I changed the name of my business this year too, and so it was just same thing. Felt right. Felt like it was time. Perfect. Well, thanks for getting on the podcast with us today, guys. We enjoyed this chat.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Rural Rundown podcast.
Thanks for listening. You can always find us on social media at The Rural Rundown.
And if you really liked this episode, we would totally love it if you gave us a review and gave us a little rating.
It would mean so much to us. And for more small town roots and business savvy, catch us on the next one.